Life is filled with moments. And we remember when we met our wife, our husband for the first time. We remember the day that we married him, our wife, our husband. And some of us even remember the day our sons and daughters were born. Much like professional wrestling, it's filled with moments. We remember WrestleMania 3 when Hulk Hogan picked up that big Andre the Giant and slammed him onto the mat at WrestleMania 3. We remember when Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, invaded WCW right after the infamous curtain call. Was it an invasion of WWF? He ended up starting the Monday Night Wars. And just before that, we remember the moment that Austin 316 said, you know what he said. We remember that moment. And now, I hope you remember this moment. The first episode of Faction 919. Hey,
We're
I,
here.
I am your host, Fannmann, joined by C. Rich, JB, and Darren Stone. And we'll get into all these fabulous young men. But I want to read a quote first. This is from Superstar, now WWE Superstar Bray Wyatt. He says, "Wrestling is not a love story. It's a fairy tale for masochists, a comedy for people who criticize punchlines, a fantasy most can't understand, a spectacle no one can deny. Lines are blurred, heroes are villains, budgets are cut, business is business. But it can also be a land where dead men walk, where honor makes you elite, where demons run for office and rock bottom is a reason to rejoice. It's an escape, a reason to point the blame at anyone but yourself for 2 to 3 hours, an excuse to be a kid again. And nothing matters except the moment we are in. Wrestling is not a love story, it's much more. It's hope. And in a world surrounded in hate, greed, and violence, a world where closure may never come, we all know a place that has hot and cold hope on top, for better or for worse. And that is professional wrestling. And we are a professional wrestling podcast, all things wrestling. So, before we get into it, I wanted to ask you, gentlemen, what is some of your earliest memories and what got you into wrestling? For example, myself. I remember I am from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So the Crown Coliseum at the time was just built in November of '97, and never seen wrestling, never been to wrestling, but I went with an aunt of mine, and I said, "Well, who do I cheer for?" Not knowing how the format works, and who do I cheer for? I don't know what do I do. She said, "I like Stone Cold Steve Austin." I said, "Well, I'll go for him," and that was the same Raw that The Rock looked at his page and it had Austin 316 on it, and behind him was Stone Cold. So I was at a historic Raw there. And from that moment, I fell in love. So first, see Rich, your earliest
Oh,
memories and what got you into wrestling?
oh, wow. What got me into wrestling was my dad. My dad and I used to watch it, and it was one of the few things he and I had in common. And he took me to my first match. I think it was 1976. So it gives you an idea how old I am. I was about 10 years old, and I believe it was either 1976 or 77. And I remember the main event match was Gene and Ole Anderson against Ric Flair and Greg Valentine. And I was mesmerized. We had been at the house, we were watching television on a black and white set. And when I got to the arena, what I remember the most is, wow, it's amazing how colorful everybody is. You know, the tights are blue, they're not gray. You know, the tights are red, they're not gray. And, you know, and of course, with a Gene and Ole, Ric Flair, and Greg Valentine match, you're going to get blood. And it was very bloody. And I was just, like I said, I was mesmerized by it. And ever since then, I've had a love for it. And you know, here I am, you know, 40 years, 50 years later, 40 years later, and you know, I still love it.
A lot of memories come from C. Rich. And as we move on, JB, your earliest memory and what made you fall in love with wrestling?
Earliest memory is 6:05 TBS and pizza. Saturdays were pizza night and 6:05 wrestling. At the time, and most of my, for a large part of my life, I didn't realize it. My grandmother on my father's side was a huge wrestling fan. And my dad would go with her, and this was the era where they thought it was all completely real. And supposedly my grandmother almost went over the rail at a wrestler. So, sitting there eating pizza, watching wrestling, and then my sister happened to work for the independent, then Fox station in Hurricane, West Virginia, and she got free tickets to the Huntington Civic Center for NWA. And I remember watching Dusty Rhodes in a cage match, in a tag team cage match, and it was great. And I just remember my dad and a couple other, my brother and his friend, were all arguing with me. And looking back, they were all cheering for the bad guys. And as like an 8-year-old, I'm cheering for Dusty Rhodes, the or the Rock and Roll Express, all the good guys. And they're just kind of looking at me, making fun of me. And I'm not realizing. I'm like, why are you cheering for them? They're cheating. And just some of those are my earliest memories. And just like then going to having my son go to events where I'm cheering for the bad guys and he's cheering for the good guys. And I'm just like, yeah, that feels about right. That's how it should be with wrestling. And for me, that's what it is.
All right. So in the family tree, it all stays strong in professional wrestling. Darren Stone, earliest memories and what got you into professional wrestling?
Well, my story really has nothing to do with family, only because my folks did not like it when I watched wrestling. My next door neighbor, I was over at his house on a Saturday. We were, doing whatever, playing whatever. And he turns on the TV and you hear the iconic voice of the great Bob Caudle announcing Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And all of us, I'm like, what is this? And he's like, it's wrestling, dude. You got to watch it. And so we started watching it. And Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, the Briscoe brothers, the original Briscoe brothers, might I add, Jack and Jerry, big time match. And from there, they announced that there was a show coming to Harrisonburg, Virginia, the high school gym. So we had to go. And the main event that night was Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant versus One Man Gang with Sir Oliver Humperdinck, God rest his soul, in the main event. And if Valiant beat One Man Gang, he got 5 minutes in a lights out match with Sir Oliver Humperdinck. And of course, that never happened because Humperdinck skedaddled back to the locker room. But from that moment on, yeah, absolutely, I was hooked. And, for the past 40 years, it's been nothing but love. And no matter how much I've tried to get my daughters into it, my wife into it, etc., it's basically I'm a one-man gang myself there when it comes to the business. So there you go.
Hey, the history is strong with Darren Stone in professional wrestling. So, and with that, we are all Faction 919. I want to introduce all of us. I am your host, Fannmann, because hey, I'm a fan man. And each week we're going to dive into Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT, the results, how we're feeling about it, and we'll talk about it. And see, Rich, take them down the path that you'll be showing us each week.
Well, I'm going to be looking at the old school. There's a lot of great stories from the old school. And, when you say old school, what is old school? Well, in my opinion, anything prior to about 2000 is pretty much old school. And it could go all the way back to the 50s. Fannmann and I were watching something the other night, and it had a wrestling show that had an early Bruno Sammartino on it, and it was interesting to watch. And it was like, you start to see the ties that bind a little bit. I mean, I couldn't believe Bruno won with a bear hug, but hey, he won with a bear hug, but in, 1959 or whatever the case may be, that was top stuff. But like this week, got a classic. Greg the Hammer Valentine and Chief Wahoo McDaniel. I mean, these two guys were phenomenal. They sold out all over the Mid-Atlantic territory, and their feud is absolutely legendary. And we'll go into the history of that feud. We'll go into the different nuances of that feud. And I think you'll be not only entertained, I think you'll be informed, and you might even be surprised.
It'll be fun to go down the old school path to see what has happened in the past times. So, and now, JB, every week you're taking us behind the scenes. What's going on with that?
I have been tasked with digging in the dirt. So, kind of the gardener of the faction. I dig around all important places. Hey, look what I found on Reddit. So my goal is to be the one who goes, hey, did you hear about this? So each week I will try to give some insight to some backstage things that is happening, and maybe find some rumors and things of that nature and see where the product will be going in the future.
I like it. Filling the scene, what's happened backstage, front stage, and even in Gorilla. I like it. So, and Darren Stone, man, each week you're going to be sitting down with some big names and letting us peek into their lives and tell us each week what you'll be given to us.
Well, using contacts from present, past, and future, hopefully future, I will be sitting down with some of the top names of today and yesteryear, as well as some of the top names that you eventually will see either their names, I would say, let's say their names expand, or, they rise to the top of the television shows, the cards, the matches, etc. So we will go one-on-one, talk about what got them into the business, what they love about the business, future storylines, etc.
Good stuff. I like it. And not to mention, also one more member of Faction 919, Surfer J. Each week we go into the Indy corner with him, where he interviews and sits down with independent stars, and you'll see that later on in the segment. So, so let's get started. So this week we're talking about what's happening on Raw. So far, man, the big story is Roman Reigns, and on Raw and SmackDown actually. Because he's double champ, and so are his cousins, the Usos. The Raw and SmackDown tag champs. Roman, Raw and SmackDown WWE champion. So, for the Universal, WWE Universal champion. So, and that's the big thing with him. But each week we'll take a deeper dive. This week we'll just kind of do an overview because of our first episode here. And I was talking earlier with the guys. It's good to see where Roman Reigns has come from, man. I remember a time he was booed out of the building. He's getting a reaction. John Cena always said, "You're getting a reaction, right? Don't care what it is." So, but it's good to see that he's taking control.
He's not only taking control; he has really evolved into a leadership role there. That I mean, he comes out, he looks like the man now, and I think he's always had the confidence. He's always been a great athlete. But he has a presence about him now that I think just translates with the crowd, and the crowd goes ape crazy over him. And, and I think the Usos are a great touch. I mean, they're one of my favorite tag teams. I mean, I look at them. The funny thing is, I look at Roman Reigns and I look at the Usos, and what I see the continuation of the wrestlers that I watched, the Samoans and things like that, when I was a kid. And, it's one of those things that, when Randy Orton was wrestling, if I was streaming through the channels, I was going to stop and I was going to watch Randy Orton because I watched his dad and I watched his grandfather. So, I mean, it's the ties that bind kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And real quick, moving on to SmackDown as well. The big thing on SmackDown, two big things really. Ronda Rousey had an open challenge for her belt, and we saw a return of Emma. Emma came in there and had a good match, and she looks good thus far. And I guess right behind Roman, maybe in front now, we also saw a return a couple weeks ago. And now each week he's doing something a little different, and JB will dig into that later. Bray Wyatt getting one hell of a reaction coming back, and now he's introduced a different character. We've seen Bray Wyatt, now we've seen Firefly Funhouse Bray Wyatt, we've seen this Bray Wyatt. Now we have a character, the Fiend. Now we have Uncle Howdy, and we'll dig into that a little more later. And lastly, AEW NXT. Of course, the big thing coming out of AEW is all the CM Punk drama, but that's backstage stuff. We'll leave that for JB. NXT, the biggest thing that happened this week, we have another fourth generation superstar that debuted, The Rock's daughter. Right, so that's good, and well, she definitely comes from one hell of a family tree. So what do you guys see for her in the future?
Well, the pedigree's there, that's for sure.
My biggest, yeah, well, absolutely. My biggest issue, and I'm still not sure how I feel. I get bringing her in a group, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But my biggest concern is bringing her in as a heel. What, is that, how will she, because working as a heel, we all know, is a lot harder than working as a babyface. So I'm assuming, Triple H and Shawn and those guys have worked enough with her and they trust her enough to have this role, but she's being thrust into a role that, because it's kind of a, with the storyline with the dyad, it's a pretty high profile group right now. And, is she ready for it? They didn't start her off slow. She, they threw her right into the fire with it.
For sure.
Well, a lot of that is also it's in NXT, so they have made, and WWE has made multiple times commented this is developmental,
right?
And most of the storylines they've started more and more bringing the storylines over to Raw and SmackDown, but a lot of times it's just, oh, who is this new person? And I think they're just getting that first stop with her out of the way because they know they bring her in as a babyface. It's almost like they're going to immediately turn on her.
Right. Well, and the fact
let's
that
just skip that out of the way and just move to this next phase and see how she handles it.
Right. And the fact that they, didn't introduce her as the Rock's daughter that definitely is a plus. I mean, obviously anyone who follows the business knows it's the Rock's daughter, but the fact that the commentators are not pushing that in the, in the storyline or even on TV at all, I think that's definitely a plus for her, and that will at least, not set her up to fail as much as possible, so.
Yeah, definitely big shoes to fill, and we'll see if everyone acknowledges her like her cousin. So, as Don Juan said in the YouTube comments here. So thanks for joining us, man. So hey, and with that, we'll take our first break. We'll be right back.
Hey, Carolina Panthers fans, this is Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
Hey, look, you want a place to go for all your cardiac cast info?
Then we got just a show for you.
This is the Donnie and Anthony Show.
An all Carolina Panthers podcast. For all your Carolina Panthers info, the Donnie and Anthony Show, the DNA Show. Because the black and blue runs through our DNA.
Keep pounding.
Saturday, December 10th, Dorton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Fortitude Wrestling Entertainment presents The Mega. Olympian and wrestling legend Kurt Angle headlines a fantastic night of action. Sunday, November 27th, Dorton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Big Time Wrestling presents Return of the Dragon. Wrestling Hall of Famer Ricky Steamboat returns to the ring, headlining a fantastic card that also features the Rock and Roll Express, FTR, Jay Lethal, Arn and Brock Anderson, the Briscoe Brothers, and more. Friday, November 25th through Sunday, November 27th, Benton Convention Center, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. WrestleCade Weekend, a decade of mayhem. A 3-day fan fest event featuring meet and greets with many wrestling legends and current superstars. Also, autograph sessions, question and answer events, and live wrestling action throughout the weekend. Saturday, November 12th at the Redcon 1 Gym, Nashville, Tennessee. Coastal Championship Wrestling presents The Long Halloween. Chase Stevens, Damian Wayne, Ariel Levy, and others headline the big card. Sunday, October 30th at Rebus Works, Raleigh, North Carolina. Gouge Wrestling presents Malloween. TIM, Waylon Mays, Inuit Joe, Count Grog, Seymour Snot, and others will be featured on the outstanding card. You won't want to miss it. Be there!
And now we're back. So, and next thing, I'm going to introduce you to C. Rich, and he's going to take us down that old beaten path of old school rivalry. So, C. Rich, this week, what do you have for us, buddy?
Well, this week on the old beaten path, we're going to journey all the way to Raleigh, North Carolina, and take a look at Greg Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel. This was in the late 70s and early 80s. This was a big time feud for the territory of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. But it has its origins a little earlier than that time frame. And I think people are going to be really interested to see this. If you've never seen these two guys wrestle, they were tough. They were double tough. And I think it's going to be an experience.
The Wahoo. Wahoo beat me so hard, beat me so many times. And finally one day, I had just had it. I hauled off and hit Wahoo as hard as I could in his face, and I knocked him down. And he got up and he shook his head, and then we finished the match. But I mean, he was brutalizing me.
One of the greatest of the old school wrestling feuds took place in the Mid-Atlantic territory in the late 1970s and early 80s. Chief Wahoo McDaniel versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. Wahoo McDaniel was a legend on the football field, having played in the American Football League with the Houston Oilers, Denver Broncos, New York Jets, and Miami Dolphins from 1960 to 1968. Greg Valentine was a second-generation wrestler, having debuted in 1970 after being trained by Stu Hart, patriarch of the famous Hart family. To get a full perspective of the Wahoo-Greg Valentine feud, you have to go back to 1974, after Wahoo jumped into the ring to save a wrestler from Johnny Valentine. A feud of the ages was ignited.
Well, they don't like each other.
This became the feud in wrestling throughout Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Eventually, Wahoo defeated Johnny Valentine for the Mid-Atlantic title on June 29, 1975 in Asheville, North Carolina. Several weeks later, Johnny Valentine would win the United States heavyweight title. He would hold on to that belt until suffering career injuries in a plane crash near Wilmington, North Carolina in the fall of 1975. This is the same plane crash that injured Ric Flair and others and also killed the pilot. Fast forward to the fall of 1976. Johnny's son, Greg Valentine, has entered the area. He's not billed as Johnny's son, but as his brother. Valentine quickly rose through the ranks of the Mid-Atlantic area, even teaming with Ric Flair to win the World Tag Team titles before the end of 1976. In the spring of 1977, Flair and Valentine would lose the belts to Gene and Ole Anderson in a controversial match with Wahoo McDaniel as the special referee. This set up a feud between Valentine and Wahoo, with the two men trading Wahoo's Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title. September 7, 1977.
That's right. You must remember that the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship belt is also at stake. So here comes Ric Flair over to our desk.
Just because I know in my mind that Valentine will have no trouble at all pounding that Indian into a hamburger, baby. Woo!
All right, Ric Flair saying the only reason he's leaving is because he wants to and not because the referee told him. Well, Valentine learns right away that Wahoo is ready. He came with a right hand and Wahoo hit him right back with a quick chop.
These two men have been after each other.
And another stomp. He is punishing Wahoo right now.
Another elbow.
That's that bionic elbow to the top of the
Chop!
head.
Oh, what a shot! Another
Valentine
shot!
now with a right. Wahoo really slinging some shots.
Oh! That caved it in. Switched over.
Valentine quickly up on his feet and walks into another chop. The crowd's gonna go wild. Over the rope. That one sends him flying.
Valentine now very slow in getting up.
Wahoo has got a cut on his forehead. There goes Valentine through the rope. They are really out to win. They're out to beat each other. They're any way they can. They want to win.
They definitely do. You have to win, especially on television.
It's do or die for Wahoo and Greg Valentine in this match and at this stage.
The hatred between these men is just unbelievable.
Now Wahoo going to be back to the corner by Valentine. Watch out. He could be in trouble right there. This guy, when he throws that right hand, it's like a bomb coming in there when it explodes up against.
They call him the Hammer, Greg Valentine.
What tremendous force he has in that right.
Elbow.
The bionic elbow, and Wahoo looks like he may be out.
All right, so great job with that, C. Rich. So tell us a little
You
bit
know,
about putting that all together and everything.
Sure. That's only part one. Part two is going to look at the aftermath. We're going to take another look at that match, but also the aftermath of that match and what happened and how their feud continued for years on. It was interesting. One of the things when I was putting that together, someone came up to me and said, Oh, you're doing a wrestling thing? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Wow. It looks like those guys are really hitting each other. And I said, dude, they really are hitting each other. And that's the way it was. And, you know, the expression, he beat me tough, will come up in part two. And, you know, and that'll be pretty self-explanatory in the next package.
One thing I will say is just watching that one match brought back so many memories of that entire feud. But the thing that I always remember about those two guys is little known. There were times where they weren't feuding; they were actually together. While I was at a live event in the old high school gym that I went to, Wahoo was getting jumped by somebody. You know, I forget exactly who it was, but getting jumped. Valentine was leaving the locker room. He was ready just to leave the building, and fans were like yelling at him, "Go save him! Go save him!" And you could tell, you know, he played I'm perplexed. How do I do this? And then stormed the ring and chased everybody off. And, you know, he and Wahoo. But yeah, for the most part, they were always rivals. But that one little bit, there was a small time in history where they were on the same side as well.
Yeah, and we actually talk about that, and that'll actually be part in part two. And we'll go into that a little bit and the hows and whys on that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good job. Great job. Looking forward to part two and love the 919 tie-in. You know what I mean? So, and with that, we're going to show you guys what our question of the week is and where you can find us on social media.
Time now for the Faction 919 question of the week. Which faction is your favorite wrestling faction and why? Your choice can be from any time period, whether it be from the past or the present. Remember, it must be a faction and not just a tag team. The faction must have at least 3 members and have spent a significant amount of time together. DX would be considered a faction. The Road Warriors with Paul Ellering would be considered a tag team with a manager. Send your answer to faction919nc@gmail.com with the heading Favorite Faction. Next week, we'll go over the answers and compare them to our answers. Remember, who is your favorite wrestling faction and why? Faction919nc@gmail.com.
All right, there you have it. You see our question of the week. Question of the week? Who was your favorite faction and why? And also, you see it scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We also shows you where you can find us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, right here on YouTube. So follow us and subscribe. So next, JB, you're gonna have to tell us what's going on backstage, front stage. Hey, even in gorilla position, what goes down? What do you got for this week for us?
I decided to go very small for the very first episode. Let's discuss CM Punk and AEW and everything else. So I have 3 pages of notes. So if you guys want me to cut off or get a little faster, please let me know. Because I think a lot of the back history is also kind of needed. So first of all, if you didn't realize, CM Punk used to be in the WWE. He rolled out of the ring and then quit. And then all of a sudden, he shows up on Cole Cabana's podcast, which at the time set podcasting records and was unbelievable the amount of traffic Cole Cabana was getting. And CM Punk just decimated WWE, the doctors, everything. And it ended up with a giant lawsuit involving the doctor and most likely WWE helping him. But they went after Punk and Cabana. Of course, CM Punk being CM Punk, if you go against him, he will try and burn every bridge known to man involving whatever. So he's best buddies with Cole Cabana. They're going to fight this lawsuit. They start it, and guess what happens with lawsuits? They suck the living daylights out of your bank account. So CM Punk may have gotten a little angry and is like, oh, where's all my money's going? So this is kind of where it all gets a little gray with Cole Cabana. Supposedly, the rumors are that Punk went, hey, I need you to start paying. And Cabana was basically like, you said you were going to pay for all this. What's the deal? Whatever happened from that point on. Cole Cabana is now public enemy number 143 for Cole Cabana. He just adds him to the list behind his bedpost, just scratches out like Vince McMahon underneath Cole Cabana. So now they are no longer friends. And the lawsuits end. They have to pay a lot of money, both of them, and it's very ugly. CM Punk decides to attempt to go to MMA and looks horrible. And after that, this thing comes up called AEW. AEW tries to bring in Punk. Nothing really happens. Cole Cabana comes in. He joins the Dark Order. He is becoming an attraction. Then all of a sudden, CM Punk goes, you know what? Maybe I do want to go back into wrestling because I have failed so horribly at MMA. He comes back. Everybody's raving. Look, CM Punk is back. Oh, this is awesome. All of a sudden, Cole Cabana disappears. There's even a video of somebody asking Colt about, hey, I heard one of your friends is coming back, CM Punk. What do you have to say? And then he just kind of gives a screenshot of like, yeah. And they move on. All of a sudden, Cole Cabana is no longer in the Dark Order. He's not seen on AEW. And it's almost rumored that he has been let go of the company. Come to find out, after the purchase of ROH, Cole Cabana is now in ROH. Everyone's a little confused. So, did he do this or not? So then it leads into a promo with Hangman Adam Page, where Hangman Adam Page talks about how Punk is not really respected backstage. You won't believe this. CM Punk is upset about that. He never gets upset about anything.
Shocking.
So now he's on a rampage against CM Punk. Or CM Punk's on a rampage against Adam Page for a very benign comment of nobody really likes you backstage. It gets to the point where they're in Charleston, West Virginia. CM Punk not knowing, I'm throwing a lot of shade at CM Punk. I used to be a huge Punk fan, but actually this moment right here made me go, I don't understand what he's doing. In Charleston, West Virginia, he calls out Adam Page, come out here and wrestle me. This is close to your home. No, it's not. It's West Virginia. It's not Virginia. So he states completely wrong, calls out somebody who is not there and insults him, and then just moves on. All right, there's a whole bunch of, matches with CM Punk and Jon Moxley. Moxley beats CM Punk for some apparent reason. And then Punk loses his smile. So some random guy during an open challenge Moxley lays out, runs out and grabs a contract and runs back all angry. No clue who, most of the crowd, no clue who he is. The announcers say it's Ace Steel. Oh my goodness. No clue. Hate to say it. No clue. Comes back out, pumps up Punk while he's in Chicago. You're great, Punk, blah, 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 drops an F-bomb. They move on to the next match. CM Punk versus Jon Moxley at their next pay-per-view. Somehow CM Punk wins, beats Jon Moxley, goes backstage, and immediately decides to ask a reporter, hey, you're best friends with Colt Cabana, aren't you? The reporter actually goes, no, we had a falling out. We are not friends. That doesn't stop him. CM Punk launches into Colt Cabana for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Then he launches into the executive vice presidents of the company while he's sitting next to Tony Khan, the owner of the company, just obliterating the staff. CM Punk finishes up and leaves. Now that could be it. All of a sudden, this is where the rumors start to come out, and my sources, known as the Reddits and the Twitters, explode. Supposedly, this is what the facts are. The Young Bucks and Omega, along with the head of legal for AEW and the Jaguars, go into the locker room. Then punches are being thrown. Matt Jackson gets hit in the head with a chair. There's a dog running around. CM Punk or Kenny Omega picks up the dog, hands it to the head lawyer for protection. And for that, he gets punched and then bitten by Ace Steel.
You think he got bitten by the dog? He got bitten by a wrestler?
He got bit by the wrestler. Not the dog. The dog was supposedly scared. The dog is named Larry, if you don't know. Larry gets picked up, handed to somebody. CM Punk is yelling at people, not caring about his own dog. And Kenny Omega somehow gets punched and bitten. There was rumors that the Bucks kicked in the door. That has been disproven. There's rumors that it was very aggressive. But basically, from what I have seen and read and heard, what happened was they came in, not aggressive, didn't kick in the door. Obviously angry. Let's talk about this. CM Punk said in that press conference, if you have a problem with me, come talk to me. Didn't like this. And basically, Ace Steel has now been fired from AEW. So his two moments are throwing an F-bomb on TV, biting Kenny Omega. Now, this week, backstage, there has been sightings of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Don Callis. So the rumors are pretty much believed that they had a huge investigation. The investigation seems to be wrapping up. CM Punk is probably never going to wrestle in AEW again, but they don't know what's going to happen. The Young Bucks and Omega are back, but again, are they going to wrestle?
There was a promo on AEW with those guys.
So there was a promo this week, or what was?
So just little hints. Yeah, there was a. I wouldn't say it. There was a video montage, let's say, of the Bucks of the Elite. Yes.
Yes, I saw
montage.
they were in the video
Yes.
package with the Elite, and it's like, oh, there's a little hints that they are starting to come back, but
Right.
there are still rumors of lawsuits from CM Punk. CM Punk, if you do somehow see this, I don't hate you. I'm just seeing what has been going on. Please don't sue. So that's been the biggest rumors, and then oddly enough, this week there was another rumor that Larry the dog was hit by a door in the melee and knocked 2 teeth loose and had to have them removed. Somehow that was debunked within hours, saying no, the door did not hit the dog. The dog was nowhere near the door. The dog was in the arm of the legal head of AEW and Jaguars and was fine. So that is the big kerfuffle with AEW.
Mm.
Man, oh man.
And there's also, I should also know with that, there was multiple meetings with staff in AEW and the wrestlers saying, please stop leaking information out to the Dave Meltzers and all the wrestling organizations. And within
JB.
hours, everything was released to people. So then they had to have a second interview or second meeting with John Moxley, Bryan Danielson, and Chris Jericho saying, seriously, guys, stop. And oddly enough, that's when a lot of the news kind of like, and information being flooded out was like tamped down for a while. It was like, oh, the wrestlers have actually decided to say, we should not be getting this out. And finally, with this AEW thing, it was mentioned that Chris Jericho behind the scenes was helping out a lot. He was one who went to TonyCon and said, hey, we had to have the cops get involved. It's okay. Went to CM Punk and said, you're a cancer in the locker room. You've got to stop this. And CM Punk said, mind your own business. So he's really into figuring out what's going on backstage. So that is with that. That's the whole AEW situation. Any comments or questions about that?
Well,
That we want to get into.
I just want to say though, you were talking about the wrestler being bitten,
Yes.
and he was bitten by another wrestler.
He was bitten by Ace Steel, who was hired as like a production manager. He's a former wrestler.
Okay.
And he is a friend of CM Punk's. So basically the whole ordeal is AEW All Elite, or the Elites versus Punk and Ace Steel.
Okay. Well, I heard on a promo, and I believe I heard this on a promo, that Mike Tyson is supposed to be supposed to be with AEW, I think next week in Baltimore or something like that. And I'm like, isn't that ironic? You know, I mean, the boxer that bit another boxer is going to be in the same league as a wrestler who was being bitten, who had to, had the dog and all that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it seems like AEW wants these controversies and almost relishes in them at times, because Tyson has been on before and it was a train wreck. Like, he had a bunch of MMA guys with him and it was just like everyone was confused. It was like, what are they trying to do? And then all of a sudden they're like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And the next week it was never mentioned again.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, there's the final rumors of the dog. Oh, let's bring in Tyson.
Of course. Everyone needs a dance partner, and they worked in WWE, and his dance partner is Stone Cold. So they worked again.
Davey, I'm going this for you, Davey. I'm going this for you. I'm going to be there.
All right, something. If we want to transition to the next one, something a little more serious. There's not a lot of information out about it, but Adam Page during the John Moxley match, they actually ended up having to stop the match and they cut away, and it was kind of. I was watching and it was like, I couldn't tell if it was a shoot or not, but because they kept on the camera, they kept on commentary, but it sounds like Adam Page really got injured. John Moxley did a lariat and I hit him and he was spinning in the air, and the rumors are, or the thought is, that he was actually unconscious in the air and then landed. And there's actually a doctor who did a video, which is very interesting. He goes through the entire sequence talking about where the lariat hit him and basically hit him in the upper neck area. It looks like Adam was a step too early or went a step too far, and Mox may have gone a step too far as well. So they basically were trying to keep it safe, but wrestling is, things are going to happen. So it hit him in the neck, jostled his head. And luckily, I think for him, he was trying to go inside out. So he did the flip. And while he was in air, was out and he landed. And you could see him, as they said, posturing, and he was like kind of tensing up the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's when they were like, all right, let's cut the match. And so luckily overall, I think they did a good job with that, where they just kept the cameras away, went to commentary. They did an okay job with that. And then they came back because they still had 10 minutes left in the show. And they went to, they got him out of the ring, did a Moxley promo, and then went into the whole segment with MJF challenging John Moxley. But from everything that they're saying, that with Adam Page, it is mostly just a concussion. So that is good. But of course, at the same time, we saw what happened to Tua with the Miami Dolphins.
Right.
So everyone's probably going to be on edge for a while. And it's kind of sad because he just came back, starting to get into a feud, and then now he's completely knocked out, and then he's going to have to like stay out for a while and come back and restart himself.
Yeah.
And the good news with that is that Paige tweeted out literally the next day, thanking all the fans for their support and doing fine. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm happy. I'm loving the fact that AEW is taking care of me, putting me in concussion protocol, keeping me safe, and making sure that I'm ready to return to the ring. So
yeah, and let's hope the concussion protocols for AEW are better than the ones that were for the Miami Dolphins.
Right.
Well, if the Jacksonville Jaguars learned anything from the Miami Dolphins, yeah, exactly.
Well, there was the whole early on, the Matt Hardy situation where he hit his head and they kept the match going. And you could clearly see he was not there. And it was just like, nope, keep the match going. And hopefully they learned from that. And then on top of it, learn from the Tua situation, and they're going to keep Page healthy, because he is, I believe, out of their homegrown stars, one of the highest ones that could reach. I'm not going to be surprised if Triple H will not go after him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, Adam Page wrestled the indie scene in this area. I mean, I remember him being on shows in Clayton and all around the North Carolina, Virginia area. So, I mean,
because I forget what town in Virginia he's billed from, but
it's near the border.
It's where we say it's Southern Virginia, right? Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it might actually be in the Raleigh-Durham market.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So
it's one of those ambiguous counties that nobody really can never remember where it is.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally, the weirdest one, which we all probably enjoyed the most, Bray Wyatt. What in the world is going on with Bray Wyatt? He shows up. There's talks of all these little vignettes are going all over the place. They are leaking information inside of these videos. There's even like information inside of the web coding, the Java code, that are leading to like Bray Wyatt before it was announced. I mean, there was even rumors that WWE was posting people into Reddit and Twitter as like, not kind of like, well, kind of just like, hey, I just noticed this, kind of those spies to make sure people saw these little codes that were being thrown out. There was always talks of the Wyatt Six, and the two biggest rumors is that he's gonna, one, connect with wrestlers like maybe like Liv Morgan. There's a group in NXT that have kind of like followed in his footsteps, so maybe that would be the big Wyatt Six. The rumor that I believe that is actually true is the Wyatt Six are actually all of the old personas of Bray Wyatt, going from NXT Bray to WWE Bray, and then the Fiend, and it's basically all six of there. He has had six personalities, and so that would lead into this big six. And then we have to get into
that include Husky Harris is the question.
Yes, it actually did include Husky Harris. One of the rumors was it's like started Porcus, because the Porcus the pig is Husky the Harris.
Oh, okay.
Husky the Harris. It's Husky Harris, and so that is where it all kind of started with that into the NXT.
Right. Okay.
So every instance they noticed on his return was there. Then his next promo was people were debating if it was actually going to be part of it, because he came out as Bray Wyatt and he was talking from the heart. There was like a lot, he's talking about the loss of Brody Lee and another one of his friends, and it was a very different Bray, and it was a very personable Bray. And so then, of course, it changed into what we found out now is Uncle Howdy.
Oh.
So the question was, is it going to be a persona? Was that just a one-off of, hey, I'm just here. This is my first week. I want to get this from the heart so I can have this, and then I'm going to get into a character. Or is it going to lead into something else? And I think actually from last night, it sounds like he's going to be Bray, and then there's this other side character, Uncle Howdy. Now the question is, who is Uncle Howdy? Early before we started, Darren Stone had made a comment that it looks a lot, the mask looks a lot like his uncle Barry Windham. And it does, there is a lot of similarities. But I think it's actually going to be, if you believe this, Bo Dallas. In the shot, somebody, of course, online has already figured out, they took a screenshot and blew it up of his ear of Uncle Howdy, and it had a little cross earring. It is the same similar style that Bo Dallas wears. Also, if you look at the promo last night and the promo Bo Dallas did as fake Bray Wyatt when he was part of the B team, the similarities there are there as well. So could this be another way to change the angle to have Uncle Howdy there and have Bray Wyatt, since they are fairly similar kind of in size and also in cadence? So with Bray Wyatt, who knows what's going to happen? And he's one of those ones where you just have to go, let's enjoy the ride. And it's almost like television Lost, where every week somebody's like, oh, what are we going to do? What did that mean? Because I remember with Lost, I saw Star Trek, which was created by J.J. Abrams. And it got to the point where I'm watching Star Trek trying to figure out if J.J. Abrams has left a clue in Star Trek for Lost.
I mean, bottom line, like you said, we just need to enjoy the ride, because let's be honest, now that Bray is back, the rumors are that he's basically been given his full creative control over his character, and just knowing how his mind works, I think the world's in for we're in for a great ride of whatever's to come next for him. That's
Yep.
And I think pretty much the only major missteps with him have been was when WWE has tried to either rein him in or try something that's not quite authentic to the character.
I would agree. I would agree 100%.
The Randy Orton Funhouse thing. They were trying to do a Hardy delete thing, and it failed.
Right.
I'm going to say it failed spectacularly because it was so bad. I somewhat enjoyed it because it was just so WWE attempting something. And then there was the match with Randy Orton where the weird cockroaches appeared on the screen. I was like, ooh, what is this going on? No, match ended. We're done. We ran out of time. No explanation ever of what was going on with that.
Yeah.
So I think if they let him just be him, give him those Undertaker matches like Undertaker did on the last ride, let him just be his insane self, it'll be great.
Yeah. It's almost like the nowadays Stone Cold, where every week you're tuned in. What is Stone Cold going to do to Vince this week? Now people are tuning in each week to see what the hell is Bray Wyatt going to do this time.
What's the AR code? What's the AR code?
Right.
And like,
updated version.
A lot of times on Fridays, I'm a little busy, so I'm just like, wherever I'm at, I'm like scrolling on my phone. I'm like, come on. When's the QR code going to hit?
Right. So, and now that he's back, he has already caught up and outsold in merchandise the Bloodline, who's the face of the company. So,
and he has been named the number one, put in number one babyface over for SmackDown over Drew McIntyre. So,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, so he's come back, and he's come back for good. It seems like this time. So, hey, JB, I appreciate all those updates, man. So with the AEW brawl, everything is going with CM Punk, Adam Page update. Hey, man. Hope everything works out well. And with Bray Wyatt, everything's good. And we had a real quick, before we go to break here, we had a question from Don Juan. Would you guys like to see MJF in WWE? What do you guys think? Yes or no?
I think eventually he'll be there.
Yeah.
2024. The bidding war of 2024.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think
Bottom line, I mean,
post Vince McMahon, I think he's going to do unbelievable in WWE. I think he would do great in during the Vince era. But at the same time, I think Vince would want to flip flop him too much between face and heel, and he should always be, no matter what, this generation's heel.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
I know they're trying to do a weird face thing with him right now, but if he's in WWE, give him like the Miz role. Even I would hate to say it. If he would come to WWE, his first feud should be with the Miz.
Right.
Absolutely.
Just the two of them
Good book.
going
Yeah.
nuts on each other with promos.
Yep.
The Miz helping him out, showing him the WWE way and helping him navigate it, I think would be the best thing for everybody.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Iron sharpens
You
iron
were
for sure.
talking. You mentioned that they were trying to. I don't know if they're trying to turn him face or if the crowd, because he's gone from getting booed out of the arena, which is the best getting those heat I've ever seen of a heel in a long time, to they can't get enough of him. I mean, they're saying his catchphrase along with him. They're wearing the scarves. They're chanting his name. I mean, his merchandise is. I can't tell. I don't know how much, but every time you turn around, half the crowd has the freaking scarf on.
Right.
So I mean, it's whether he wants to be a crowd favorite or not, it's definitely happening.
Oh, I think they should. I mean, they could do it easily as the NWO way, where they're always going to be quote unquote heels,
Right.
but they are over with the crowd.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
That was like my
hero. Yeah.
yeah, be the anti-heroes, because I was at the age of during that feud where I was a huge Sting fan as a kid. He could do no wrong. And it was always like I always cheered for him, even though the NWO was quote unquote cool.
Yeah.
Because he was the good guy, they were the bad guys. They need to, I think, almost do that with him, just because it feels like that weeks where he's like trying to pop the crowd and get them excited for something. And it was like, maybe you shouldn't. Just as for me, it was like maybe you shouldn't quite say that and just keep going as you were and just insult everybody. Who cares? They're gonna eat it up.
I mean, basically referring, because he posted it on Twitter, and I thought it was just going to be a tweet thing, but he comes out for his promo on Wednesday night, calls the crowd in Norfolk, Virginia, devil worshippers, and they freaking pop. I mean, he goes, the devil is in Virginia. Where are all the devil worshippers at? And the crowd just goes nuts. So, I mean,
That's good.
if that's not if that's not over with the crowd, and I don't know what it is. I mean, he's just so much. He's so fun to watch.
All right, I'm sorry if I'm taking over, Anthony. I'm going to override you here. Now, besides The Miz, who would work well with MJF as a feud? Because I don't think he's there ready for Roman yet.
Yeah.
Seth Rollins.
Who else would there?
Seth Rollins.
Seth Rollins is good. Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
The drippy, sleazy Seth Rollins versus the Long Island MJF. Yeah, that might go well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Seth Rollins can do anything. I mean, he's fantastic. I was watching him Monday night, and it was interesting because, he came out, he didn't wrestle, but his music comes, plays and everything like that, and the crowd singing along with his entrance theme. The match happens, and he's I forgot the name of the kid that he's that's his protege or whatever, but they are still singing, Theory, yeah. And they are still singing parts of his entrance theme during Theory's match. And I was like, that's freaking over. That is freaking over. And I just, I was like, Seth Rollins is I've turned into kind of a mark for Seth Rollins. So, that's who I.
Hey, he's a Bears fan, so I'm all for
it. He is. That's a very, very good answer. I guess the first thing we think of is what personality can match his personality, and Seth Rollins is probably your best answer and best overall answer. But just thinking of a veteran, someone who can work and bring the best out of that person as well, not MJF, but him. I'll bring in Dolph Ziggler to see his work. Let's get his work rate up, and let's get and MJF could probably bring the best out of Dolph, because Dolph pretty good on the mic, not top tier, but pretty good. So they could, as I said, iron sharpens iron there. So But hey, JB, good job with all that, man. Good stuff. And
Absolutely.
hey, we're going to show you what's coming up in your area, and another podcast you can watch if you're a Panthers fan.
Saturday, December 10th, Thornton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Fortitude Wrestling Entertainment presents The Mega. Olympian and wrestling legend Kurt Angle headlines a fantastic night of action. Sunday, November 27th, Thornton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Big Time Wrestling presents Return of the Dragon. Wrestling Hall of Famer Ricky Steamboat returns to the ring, headlining a fantastic card that also features the Rock and Roll Express, FTR, Jay Lethal, Arn and Brock Anderson, the Briscoe Brothers, and more. Friday, November 25th through Sunday, November 27th, Benton Convention Center, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. WrestleCade Weekend, a decade of mayhem. A 3-day fan fest event featuring meet and greets with many wrestling legends and current superstars. Also, autograph sessions, question and answer events, and live wrestling action throughout the weekend. Saturday, November 12th at the Redcon 1 Gym, Nashville, Tennessee. Coastal Championship Wrestling presents The Long Halloween. Chase Stevens, Damian Wayne, Ariel Levy, and others headline the big card. Sunday, October 30th at Rebus Works, Raleigh, North Carolina. Gouge Wrestling presents Halloween. TIM, Waylon Mays, Inuit Joe, Count Grog, Seymour Snot, and others will be featured on the outstanding card. You won't want to miss it. Be there!
Hey, Carolina Panthers fans, this is Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
Hey, look, you want a place to go for all your cardiac cast info?
Then we got just a show for you.
This is the Donnie and Anthony Show.
And all Carolina Panthers podcasts. For all your Carolina Panthers info, the Donnie and Anthony Show, the DNA Show, because the black and blue runs through our DNA.
Keep pounding.
All right, there you have it. So, and next, Surfer J, we go to the Indy corner with him as he's one-on-one with Indy star A.C Devine.
Well, let's get started here. I'm here with A.C Devine, one of the young up-and-coming indie wrestlers in North Carolina. First off, let's just talk about how'd you get your start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, me getting introduced into wrestling was I went to an NCWA show in Clayton and met up with C.W. Anderson, and he got me connected with Dan Wright and at the Fracture Factory, and I started training there.
But you will know who I am in the future, because that's what I am.
Long story short, Pops helped me out with training as well, so he's been the one that's really focused in and helped me get my in-ring stuff down.
The Pops you're talking about, that's Michael Devine, right?
Yes, sir.
The first time I saw you, I think was when you were training, but then the first time I saw you wrestle was at Live Championship Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And you were under a mask and you did the whole deal with, you wrestled Michael Devine, and the whole storyline was going to be pretty awesome, I feel like.
Yeah.
Purge kidnapped you and all that stuff, but I'm guessing, the pandemic hit right after that. We weren't really able to see it through, but
yeah, man. That was my very first match. That was my debut match, and then we were going to hit the ball rolling and just keep on going in 2020.
mm-hmm.
But pandemic hit, we didn't do anything 2020.
Yeah, that was going to be an awesome storyline. I mean, we had video of the whole thing. We had the Purge kidnap you, the lights go out, and they're holding you. Like, that was going to be a cool angle, I feel like. But so what other promotions have you kind of worked for since then?
Man, so let's see. Shockwave, RWA, Firestar Pro Wrestling, FWE, DCW, trying to think of all of them really. There's been so many in North Carolina. ACW, Extreme Shock Wrestling. We actually got a tag team championship match in November at Extreme Shock Wrestling. I've wrestled in almost all of the promotions in North Carolina.
Okay. And when you say we, you're talking about your partner in the Divine Dynasty?
Yes, sir. Dynamite Jackson.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about the Divine Dynasty.
Yes, sir. So we decided on it was originally just gonna be me and Pops, but then Dynamite came along and Pops really saw. Well, me and Pops we both saw the potential in Dynamite, and our styles really mixed together very well because we really do have good chemistry together, and it's just our styles are perfect together because I'm the power and he's the high flying agility, so it just mixed perfectly together. And then we had our first debut tag team match at Firestar Pro Wrestling in May of this year, so we've just been going full stride ever since.
Sweet. Firestar, that's in kind of Greensboro area, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, Greensboro, what other kind of towns have you wrestled in North Carolina? How far have you kind of gone?
The farthest would either be, I guess Winston-Salem for AML. That'll be probably the farthest. We were just at Gastonia, so that'll be the farthest. That was about 3.5 hours with AML.
Sweet. Who's kind of been your influence that you like to watch on TV and kind of pull things from and use?
Man, Bret Hart has been a really big one over the past year for me because he's just so smooth in the ring, and his style is really just innovative for what he does. Yeah, I gotta say Bret Hart has just been such a big influence on me.
That's interesting because you wrestle kind of as a bigger guy, but
Yeah.
you still want to use the technical kind of side that you learn from
Mhm.
Bret.
Yes,
That's
sir.
pretty cool. And then who's kind of been your influence on the indies? Because there's two different. You can be on the TV, but I mean the indies is a whole nother scene.
Man, LeBron Cozone, I got to give it to him. That's if I want to aspire to be like anyone, I gotta say it's Cozone.
Interesting. He's a up and coming guy, but I know he helps out a lot of guys. He works with Firestar, right? And
Yes, sir.
he's done some stuff with AEW. That's cool.
And we'll have part 2 with A.C Devine in the Indy corner with Surfer J next week. So, and that's what we'll do each week. Interview a independent star. There's not a lot going on in the independent scene.
There's
And
a lot going on, yeah.
Yeah, so many events all around, not just our state, all over the world. And these guys get their opportunity to showcase for the big guys like WWE and AEW and even NXT and that kind of deal. So we always want to shout out to those guys who are out there working hard, taking those bumps, and trying to make something of themselves and
not making money at the same time. That's
and not making a whole lot of money at the same time. Absolutely.
See, Rich and Dan Stone are both have been in the business and they know how tough it is and that kind of thing. So hey, if you ever want to check out AC Devine, October 30th, he is part of Firestar Pro Wrestling in Jamestown, North Carolina, and November 19th, Extreme Shot Wrestling in Kinston, North Carolina. See what you're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, there is so many good indie wrestling events going on around. We did a little bit of a rundown of some of the stuff that you might see in the Raleigh area. Gouge has a lot of their shows in downtown Raleigh and stuff like that. If you get a chance, go out. If you love wrestling, get a chance and go out and see these guys. They're good. They're mastering their craft. Some of them have been on the independent scene for years. So, I've always said that it's, getting to the major leagues has, there is talent that goes into it, but a lot of it is opportunity. And the opportunities for the big leagues aren't nearly there as they once were back in the territory days and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean the talent isn't there. The talent is there. And if you get a chance, go out and see them. And, they're usually very, very friendly after the matches and stuff like that. And before the matches, well, they'll talk to you and, and if you like what you see, tell them they want that feedback. Tell them exactly. If you like it, tell them.
Yeah. And for sure. And while you're there, you may even catch a big name. A guy like Kurt Angle and Kane are still working the indie scene just to help those young guys out.
I mean, for example, you talked about, how the guys are on the indie scene for years and years. As a lot of people know, I started my indies career in North Georgia. Happened to, work alongside, I was a referee and manager, worked alongside this, young upstart kid back in the mid to late 90s, some kid named, AJ Styles, who spent many a year on the independent circuit. And, his dream, to this day, remember him talking about, I'm going to make it one day. And then he got a TNA contract, which was, at that time, really exciting for him and everything like that. And then 6-7 years ago, Royal Rumble, his music hits. And I just remember sitting there like, AJ finally made it. And it was so good to see. And so he spent 15 plus years as, and they use it in promos, you spent 15 years getting to the big leagues and blah, blah, blah. But all that work and sacrifice finally paid off for him. So yeah, go see an independent show. These guys are busting their butts. And for, like I said, driving hundreds and hundreds of miles, making, hundreds and hundreds of cents. And so, they're definitely doing what they can. So yeah, go support a local independent show.
For sure. And not just
who was that name again? What?
Some Styles guy, AJ, Alan Jones,
Is it STIL?
Yeah, something like that, exactly.
Hey,
the funny thing is, he, you were talking about him saying, I'm going to make it. And the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, and that won't get you anything, but in my opinion, he was probably the best wrestler from about 2000 to about, 2020 maybe. Yeah. In that generation, in my opinion, he was the best wrestler of that generation.
And he was doing Styles Clash and, in the early to mid 90s, and he's still doing it, and it still looks this. You could put 2 video clips of, early AJ Styles, and it's still the exact same. Hasn't lost a step, at all. So
yeah, a North Carolina kid, as you would say. So
yeah,
and not just these wrestlers, but the guys running the show and everything, to the refs, to the owners, the promoters, and everything like that. They're busting a butt too. C. Rich was once a part of that as well, running his own promotion. So he knows the ins and outs.
Many moons ago. Yeah.
So we all understand what it is. So, and hey, we're going to tell you where to find us on social media and our question of the week.
Time now for the Faction 919 question of the week. Which faction is your favorite wrestling faction and why? Your choice can be from any time period, whether it be from the past or the present. Remember, it must be a faction and not just a tag team. The faction must have at least 3 members and have spent a significant amount of time together. DX would be considered a faction. The Road Warriors with Paul Ellering would be considered a tag team with a manager. Send your answer to faction919nc@gmail.com with the heading Favorite Faction. Next week, we'll go over the answers and compare them to our answers. Remember, Who is your favorite wrestling faction and why? faction919nc@gmail.com.
All right, last and certainly not least, Darren Stone. He's going to call it right down the middle. Maybe a little to the left, maybe to the right. I don't know. Yeah. The man in stripes.
Depends
So,
on what, a little bit of, slip a little.
everybody has a price.
There
And
you go.
with that, there you go. Around that, yes. So, and Darren, you were able to sit down with a WWE superstar. Tell us about your sit down with. Go ahead.
Well, recently had the opportunity to sit down and had a nice 15, 20-minute conversation with third generation superstar Natalya. Obviously part of along the same lines, family lines of the Hart family. So this first part of the interview, we're going to talk about just growing up in Calgary with the legendary Stu, Brett, Owen, and her dad, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, growing up in that family, as well as what got her, into WWE, and also being, being a 20-year veteran. She's got a little Hollywood experience in her now with the Bellas, and we wrap up the first part of the segment, talking about how she enjoys the role model of going to like NXT and helping train the female wrestlers of the future. So go ahead. So just we get a few extra minutes today, so which is good. I get a little bit more in depth with you. Talk about, obviously third generation superstar. Talk about growing up in the Hart family.
Yeah, for me, growing up in the Hart family, there's never a dull moment. My grandfather had a wrestling ring in our backyard. We, of course, had the dungeon, where some of the most famous superstars in the history of, pro wrestling or WWE or both trained there under him. And, we had a family promotion called Stampede Wrestling. So for me, pro wrestling has always just been in my blood. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and, it's in my heart. So it was a very cool upbringing. And of course, once I started training in the dungeon when I was in my late teens, after my very first day of training, I was really hooked. So it's something that, it's just like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. And I think that really rings true with my entire family, Brett all the way down to me.
Did you know, obviously your father, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, did you know from even before you started training, this is what you wanted to do?
Yes. I feel like there was always this element of professional wrestling that I really embodied. I loved being in front of the camera. I loved being, in school, I was always the class clown or the ham. I think I loved being athletic, but I also liked the blend of theatrics with athletics. And I think that for me, it was always like this really natural fit. So it was really something that I've loved since I was a kid. And of course, when you grow up in the business and you're surrounded by it, and, your whole family is involved in it, you're just, it's a big part of who you are, even whether you like it or not. And for me, I love it. And so I'm so grateful that I found something that I love and that I could really throw myself into as a career.
How many females trained in the dungeon? We hear about, all the Harts, Chris Jericho's, etc. How many women actually trained in the dungeon?
There was 2 women that had trained with me in the dungeon, but they were sort of in and out. They were students at my uncle's, for my uncle's wrestling school in Calgary, and so they came and went. They were great girls. I loved working with them, but they never really stayed that long. So for me, I was really the only graduate that was the only female graduate from the Heart Dungeon that went on to do stuff in pro wrestling. And again, that's the thing about pro wrestling is that you can try out and you can join a school or you can, join a wrestling camp. It's not for everyone, and a lot of women had tried it and they liked it, but it wasn't what they wanted to do. So for me, being the first female to graduate the dungeon and to go on to Japan and England and wrestle in WWE, it was a huge honor for me to be able to do that.
Now, I would say a lot of people, I watched the Bella Twins special on A&E last week. They basically said you were a mentor to them when they first started as wrestlers, not, you credit them with some of your success as well in the entertainment industry. How does it, I assume that you probably are considered that amongst a lot of the women in the locker room today, correct? Do you consider yourself a mentor to the current roster?
I'm very lucky. That's a great question. I'm very lucky that I've had the experience and the career that I've had, having grown up in the industry, having done so much in the industry, from seeing, I started in WWE right sort of when the Attitude Era was just going away. So then all of a sudden it was like this ugly duckling phase of like, I don't want to say that Divas division was an ugly duckling phase, but we were just transitioning from this really badass Attitude Era. All of a sudden we were being told that we weren't allowed to be called, women wrestlers or superstars or anything. We had to be called divas. And it wasn't necessarily a bad term. Beyonce and Diana Ross and J-Lo, all those are women that love to be called divas, but we were called, divas. And so it was a very unique time where women's wrestling wasn't really celebrated. We weren't there yet. The company wasn't there yet. They didn't really want women wrestling too much. And for me, that was really tough because my strengths were in the ring. So I was just, I came into the company at kind of an awkward phase. And then we saw the women's evolution in WWE many years later. About 7 years after I got hired, we all of a sudden saw, wow, women are being celebrated. They want women who know what they're doing. They want women who can wrestle. And we saw a lot of that at NXT, where you saw the rise of like Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, just to name a few. And women's wrestling was really being celebrated. So for me, I think a lot of the women look to me as, a sounding board or somebody that they can turn to, because I've just been through so much in the company, through the good, the bad, and everything in between. And I feel like they know that I'm reliable, solid, and dependable, and that they can get good advice from me. So I always am very honored and flattered by that.
What a good interview. And there's still more to come. Is that right, Dan?
That is right. Yeah, like I said, had a good 15, 20 minutes with Natalya. Coming up next week, we're going to hear what her feelings are now that WWE is obviously under new leadership. It's been well documented by a lot of people that Triple H and Stephanie, huge proponents of the women's evolution. And now that they are running the show, both Raw and SmackDown, we're going to get Natalya's opinion on what she thinks the future of the women in WWE is, as well as what I just completely the rest of what her career has been and the rest of her career coming up. So there you go.
Chair shots, kids. Don't take the chair shots.
Yeah, exactly. But no, absolutely classy lady. Love talking to her. She couldn't have been nicer. So
yeah, sweetheart. Part 2 coming more next week with Darren Stone. See, Rich, you got more to show us.
That's right. That's right. Next week it'll be more of the Wahoo Valentine feud, and kind of a surprising incident, or I would say incident, a surprising situation that happened between Valentine and Wahoo outside of the wrestling ring. So
I know. I'm sorry. I won't.
No, actually, you don't. Actually, you don't know.
Oh, okay. So
you don't know.
Okay.
They had a delicious dinner at Denny's.
And that could be part of the dirt sheet. So next week, JB, you got some more dirt of what's going on backstage.
I will look at my phone and find something.
I like
Maybe
it.
CM
And,
Punk will officially now hate me. He'll recognize me.
maybe one day we interview him. So we'll see. And last but not least, Surfer J, he's got part 2 of AC Devine and the guys at the Indy corner with him. So, and for us, that's it. And don't forget, on behalf of my co-hosts, C Rich, JB, Darren Stone, the best of the best, and I'm your man, Fannmann, because I'm just a fan man. We are Faction 919. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you again next week. New stuff.